watching Channel Africa Conversations.
So here is someone who constantly subordinated his personal interest. Here is someone who believed in the collective, even to the threats and ridicule of political pundits and analysts. He was not shy to say his mind. I have no vision. But of course, he had a great vision. By the end of his presidency, we saw massive infrastructure. We saw him build, roads, bridges, dams, power stations, health centers, clinics, hospitals, colleges, universities, brand new airports. He's left such a huge development stamp on our country. Yet this is a man who would publicly proclaim that I have no vision.
Hello and welcome to Channel Africa Conversations. I'm your host, Peter Ndoro, and today I'm joined by Ambassador Emmanuel Mwamba, who joins us to reflect on the life and legacy of former President Edgar Lungu, who sadly passed away recently. President Lungu led Zambia during a critical period, navigating economic challenges, championing infrastructure development, and steering his country through complex regional dynamics. Ambassador Mwamba helps us explore Lungu's contributions to national stability and his impact on Zambian life. Ambassador Mwamba, thank you so much indeed for joining us on Channel Africa Conversations.
Peter Ndoro, good day and long time. I remember you would come to our activities when I was privileged to be Zambia's High Commissioner to South Africa, and the business meetings. We hosted high-level meetings with presidents. We are privileged that you supported Zambia in our work.
It was a pleasure for me, especially given that it's my birth country. But Ambassador, it's a sad time for many people in Zambia. My condolences to you, your party, and your compatriots. Your immediate thoughts as you remember President Lungu and someone that was quite close to him. What comes to mind for you?
Well, this is a tragic loss for not just for the Lungu family, but for our country. You are aware that our country is standing at a crossroad. It is facing various challenges, and we have an election coming up in 2026. And a figure like the former head of state plays a key role in stabilizing the politics or in helping correct, the trajectory of the country. And President Edgar Lungu was actively playing that role, mobilizing and organizing the opposition. He had to abandon his retirement to just come to attempt to save both democracy and our country. So the loss is immense to all of us, to the Patriotic Front, and to our country. For me personally, it's like I've lost my father. He was a father figure to me. I held him in very high esteem, and it was under his leadership that I had the great and rare privilege to serve as Zambia's High Commissioner to South Africa, and later as Zambia's ambassador to Ethiopia and permanent representative to the African Union, because of the confidence he had in me, and that I could use my skills and my ability to help our country. So I'm forever indebted for the rare opportunity that he gave me. So the loss is both personal, it's official to our party, it's institutional to our country.
We'll talk about his public life, a lot of it which is well documented, but you were quite close to him. You worked very closely with him. You even helped him get elected. Tell me about him, the man, the person that we perhaps didn't see on television or on public platforms. What kind of man was he?
His humility. This is a man, when you walk to see him, when he has called you, he would open doors for you. He would serve you tea or wine or whatever you are drinking. I've had the rare privilege of meeting many presidents and many high-level people. I found his humility simply just disarms you. He would quickly make you settle and then discuss whatever you discuss. But like I'm saying, even when there are people waiting on the table, there are waiters or helpers in the home or at the office, this is a man who would go pick a drink and serve you. So the humility is what immediately struck you. He was a highly misunderstood person because I think many people didn't see some of the qualities of those that interacted with him at personal level. So then his lack of hunger for office is another matter that really, really struck me. Peter, if you will indulge me, let me just draw you back to 2014 for your viewers to understand, or listeners to understand. We have a president in Michael Sata, is unwell and is sitting in London, and the acting president is Edgar Lungu. His substantive position, he had two positions of Minister of Defense and Minister of Justice, and he was acting president. President Michael Sata had what you would call a white president in Guy Scott, if you remember. So although we had a substantive vice president, Mr. Michael Sata, being a total Pan-Africanist, he never let the vice president assume his role when he was absent. So in effect, you'd allow ministers like Edgar Lungu to act as president. So when he was sick and unwell in London, and that night he died, our constitution stipulates that when the office of the president becomes vacant by death, resignation, incapacity, whatever the reasons, the vice president takes over. And Edgar Lungu was acting president. And there was this legal call what to do. The leadership in the party, the leadership amongst cabinet, said, no, we can't defy the wishes of President Michael Sata. He never allowed the vice president, maybe because he has a Scottish and a British origin, maybe that could be the reason, but he never allowed him to act as president. Then Attorney General and others said, no, the law is a law. The vice president has to act as president. That day, I was privileged when the president died. I was at the acting president's house, even when we're battling with those issues, and when a meeting was called, cabinet meeting, extraordinary and urgent meeting was called at 6 o'clock in the morning to go and resolve two issues. Number one, to make an announcement to the country and to the world that our sitting head of state had died in London. And number two, to deal with the leadership crisis that had emerged. Who acts as president? The current acting president, or as stipulated by the constitution, the vice president was Guy Scott. When there was this heated debate in cabinet, President Lungu is the one that quickly quietened the debate. He says, I'm a lawyer. I'm trained as a lawyer. I'm currently Minister of Justice. I'll not be the first one to abrogate the law. Despite the strong wishes of President Michael Sata, despite his willingness to make me act as president during this crisis, unfortunately, the law is a law. Now, camps had emerged. That decision alone would take the presidents to the left or to the right. But President Lungu was willing to hand it over and give it up immediately. All of us, his supporters, were very annoyed with him. It's like he had given away the family silver. But that's kind of a man who didn't hunger for the office, who was willing to give it up if it was for the benefit of the country or if it didn't abrogate the constitution.
Some would say that he was an accidental president, in that circumstances eventually led him to the post. And you talk about not having a hunger for power. Did the presidency find him, or do you think that there came a point where he felt, perhaps this is my duty and something that I must pursue?
In fact, destiny was thrust upon him. When President Michael Sata in 2011 won that election, beating the then incumbent President Rupia Banda, at his announcement of his cabinet, President Michael Sata announced that he was going to have the vice president in Guy Scott, and the deputy vice president in Edgar Lungu. Now, such a position doesn't exist in our constitution. For us who are students of history, we saw a window immediately that maybe President Michael Sata was preparing Edgar Lungu for power. Later, when it became apparent that the president was unwell, two camps emerged. Edgar Lungu was on the one camp, but a junior in that camp. There were other people that fronted themselves as contenders and leaders, and no one saw his presidential ambition. No one saw him, like I'm saying, hunger for it. There were other people. If you just look at the newspapers then, you would think they could have become president. So yes, accidental president, he would laugh about it, but he would say destiny is like that. You would be a David who is in the field while the brothers are contesting, thinking they'll be the ones that will be king. Yet the king is with the shepherd in the bush. That was Edgar Lungu.
So when he ascended to the throne, as it were, and became president after President Sata, what were his immediate priorities, his overarching vision for the country that started to set perhaps the presidency that we would see endure?
He was mocked by a lot of people because there's something he said. He said, when a journalist asked him that question, Mr. President, you just won elections. First, prior to the campaign, journalists would ask him, what's your vision? He said, I've none. Now, that's uncharacteristic for a leader who's aspiring for office. You need to have a vision for your country. You need to have a personal vision that it should be a stamp, to the development of the country. And when I personally challenged him, I said, Mr. President, you are not helping our campaign. You cannot be saying you have no vision. He says, look, I have a vision of President Michael Sata. It's a 10-year vision. I have a vision of my party. We have a party manifesto. What vision do you want me to bring? I said, but your personal attributes, you must have some. He says, no. First of all, I'm carrying the vision of our late president. Secondly, I'm carrying the vision of the party. So here is someone who constantly subordinated his personal interest. Here is someone who believed in the collective, even to the threats and ridicule of political pundits and analysts. He was not shy to say his mind. I have no vision. But of course, he had a great vision. By the end of his presidency, we saw massive infrastructure. We saw him build, roads, bridges, dams, power stations, health centers, clinics, hospitals, colleges, universities, brand new airports. He's left such a huge development stamp on our country. Yet this is a man who would publicly proclaim that I have no vision.
Let's talk a little bit about that infrastructure build. There was a lot of development that took place. I wonder, in all of this development and beyond perhaps the physical structures themselves, what was the long-term impact on these projects on ordinary Zambians? And do you think that vision was realized?
We haven't had an infrastructure ambition other than the ambitions that we had when President Kaunda was president in the 27 years, in our formative years as a country. The subsequent governments of, for example, the MMD that came with former President Frederick Chiluba were concerned with stabilizing the economy, resolving the debt crisis. For the first time in the vocabulary of Zambians, we began to discuss inflation. We began to discuss macroeconomies. We began to discuss microeconomies. So the government in the last 20 years were preoccupied with stabilizing the economy, opening it up, liberalizing it, privatizing it. And we lagged behind with infrastructure. Roads leading to our provinces and districts were dilapidated. our generation capacity for power was very limited. We're having regular load shedding. Our population had grown from 3 million now. By then, now we are 20 million. So the infrastructure we had in schools, hospitals, universities had become too small for the great population. So the vision to do the infrastructure in the last 10 years has helped, I think, lay a fresh foundation for the development of our country, for our country, to be taken away from the throes of poverty, from the throes of unemployment, to a trajectory that should be a low middle income country or even a middle income country. So the foundation has been laid. It will be easier for President Hakainde Hichilema and successive governments to now, build our country.
Some would say, though, that he actually ended up bankrupting the country. The country was laden with debt by the end of his tenure and facing serious economic headwinds. Talk to us a little bit about the debt situation and some would say leveraging the country to China almost.
Yeah, there are fundamentals we have to deal with. It doesn't matter what color of the cat it is, whether it is white or black. If it catches a mice, you get that cat. We have a country that requires development. And if we needed to get some loans from China, so be it. Was China exploiting us? Not at all. We knew what we wanted. We wanted a brand new airport. We've now 3 brand new airports. We wanted to upgrade our power capacity. We only had 1,600 megawatts generation capacity. It has now been ramped up to 3,500. We didn't have teaching hospitals other than the first university teaching hospitals. We now have 5 public universities to cater for our population. The infrastructure build was totally necessary. Is it a debt that's unsustainable? Not at all. This is a very small debt that can be paid and can be cleared. And let me give you an example. In 1990, when Dr. Kaunda, 1991, left office and there was a new government of President Frederick Chiluba, we had a debt overhang of $7 billion. And our economy, our GDP was only $3 billion. So you could see that our debt portfolio was way above our GDP and it was unsustainable. It's a $3 billion economy. Our debt was $7 billion. As at 2021, our debt, foreign debt, was $7 billion. $11 billion. But our GDP is $26 billion. So this is not a sustainable, this is a very sustainable debt. It can be paid, it can be cleared. You just have to mobilize domestic revenue. You have to liaise with capital and, where production is done to ensure that we widen our tax base, we benefit from our resources. Annually, Zambia exports up to $7 billion worth of copper. And if our debt is $11 billion, if we leverage against our natural resources like copper, you think this should be a problem? I think it's just a policy issue. Whether you're borrowing from America or from China or from Europe, whether you're borrowing from World Bank or you've gone to the markets like we did in Eurobond, I think the issue should be policy. The issue is how do we pay back? That should be the question, not that the debt was unsustainable.
Then there were accusations of him having a really firm hand as his tenure carried on. They talk about governance issues and a shrinking democratic space. How do you answer those critics?
We are a budding democracy. We are yet to know how to handle the opposition. We are yet to know how to handle institutions of democracy, the parliament, the judiciary, institutions like Electoral Commission of Zambia, and the press. This is a balancing act every new government has been battling with. And I hope we'll come to speak to President Hakainde Hichilema because He is failing on all those parameters and on all indices. This is a man that shouted loudest that democracy is failing in Zambia. He has taken it far down. This is a man that says there's a shrinking democratic space. He's closing out the space already. So yes, there were concerns by the government of President Lungu on issues of rule of law. There were some concerns around issues of corruption. There were some concerns around the handling of the opposition at the time. But I always credit President Lungu. He was totally a man of peace. Every time these issues were raised, he was not averse to resolving them. Let me give you one example, which brought Zambia to international limelight. There was an incident in a small town called Mongu. There was a traditional ceremony, and the head of state, President Lungu, was in Mongu. So was the major opposition leader, Hakainde Hichilema. And when the presidential convoy was coming, Hakainde Hichilema refused to move his convoy from the road. And there was that altercation. Now, in Africa, the other vehicles would have been shot. They would have been bumped off the road. You saw in the video, Edgar Lungu's window came down and was pleading with his officials not to act, but just to move swiftly and overtake Hichilema's government. Of course, the police came and picked that matter as treason. It could be treason. Others want to reduce it to a traffic offense. But it was so serious that Hakainde Hichilema was locked up. And international community got concerned, and the Commonwealth sent Patricia Scotland, who was Secretary General at the time. President Lungu opened the doors, demonstrated that there was criminal offense that was committed, but he was willing to drop the charges if it would help, for example, with the democratic space and the existence of the opposition, not that there was no criminal offense committed. So that was the man. If there's an infraction, if there's a mistake, if there is an issue, he will deal with it squarely and attend to it.
So then I guess in the end, I mean, you've painted quite a picture of a man who did his best, perhaps. When the election did come and Hakainde Hichilema won the election, the margin was so significant, it would suggest that the people of Zambia had spoken and they had said, thank you very much indeed, but we really, really don't want you to lead us anymore. Is that what they were saying?
President Lungu lost that election. It came as a shock. In fact, the inner circle said he should petition that election. The outcome was doubted. Lives had been lost prior to the election and during the election. There were even calls to cancel that election because one of our leaders in Northwestern Province was killed just at the polling station. And the party felt that there were issues that needed to be dealt with and we should go to court and ensure that we petition that election. But Edgar Lungu was a man of peace. Edgar Lungu was a man who would not stand with contention. He said, look, if the people of Zambia have spoken, it's not our duty to give excuses. Let us reach out to our dear brother and allow the process to take place. Our duty is to ensure that the transition is successful and peaceful. And he made the inner officials remember that Dr. Kaunda was such a huge statesman in Africa and in the world. Dr. Kaunda could walk in Washington, in White House, in London, in Moscow, in Peking. But when he lost the election, he was humble enough, despite his large stature in the country and in the world. He says, look, if my people say I should pave way for these unknown people that have won elections, my duty is to give them. We had Rupiah Banda, 20 years later. Also, he lost to Michael Sata, a fiery figure. And Rupiah Banda said, look, if the people of Zambia have spoken, and if we have institutions that like the Electoral Commission of Zambia, and we continue to build capacity, our duty is to hand over power. So, Peter, we've had 3 presidents who are incumbent and they lose elections and they hand over to the opposition leader. This is a hallmark of success and our continuous democratic growth in Zambia. It's something we hold as a matter of pride. And President Lungu was not going to be the first one to break that good record we are building on. And to the frustration of the people around him, he says, I'm not petitioning this result. I'll give President Hakainde Hichilema a fresh page. If he thinks that the economy is bad, if he thinks that the cost of living crisis that is existing, if he thinks that I'm failing to provide employment, let him take it up. And here we are, Peter, as we sit, that the crisis is far deeper than as of 2021.
When we look back now then, hindsight is 2020 vision, what would you then say is his overall legacy as a leader, as a minister, and as a president? What would you say then is his undisputed contribution to Zambia?
He gave us a new constitution. We've been battling for a new constitution since 1991. He gave us, as soon as he came into office in 2016, he gave us a new constitution. And the infrastructure built, our country had lagged behind almost 50 years. We didn't have enough power. We didn't have enough roads. We didn't have enough schools. We didn't have enough universities. We didn't have enough hospitals. Zambia is far better. All President Hakainde Hichilema needs to do is just to recruit staff, because now we have beautiful hospitals, sometimes are empty. So his duty is just to fill up the hospitals with the requisite staff and schools and complement and take over where President Edgar Lungu left. I think history will be very kind to him. The last 3 years have been very, very sad for President Lungu. He's been humiliated, he's been harassed. The terrible cancer emerging in Africa, where a winning president belittles and humiliates his predecessor. And Zambia has been suffering this. You saw it in Botswana, you saw it in South Africa. We are seeing it in parts of West Africa. This cancer, Africa has to attend to it. The purposes of term limit was that we needed to cure these life presidents that were existing in Africa. These presidents that only could die in office. So the term limits of either 5 years or 4 years and then just 2 terms, is an opportunity to bring and grow democracy. But if you're going to harass former presidents, they will cling to power. They will refuse to hand over power because they know what is awaiting them is that their constitutional immunity for prosecution will be lifted, that they'll be harassed, they'll be called thieves, they'll be paraded to the country as the biggest thief that have ever existed. That humiliation, which is happening across Africa, which is happening here in Zambia, must come to an end. For me, it is a disincentive to the growth of democracy in Africa. And President Lungu suffered that the last 3 years.
As we start to wrap up our conversation, the last 3 years, as you said, were very difficult, but he came out of retirement and, as you described at the beginning, started to coalesce and bring together the opposition. What was his last wish for the country, do you think, in the work that he was doing to his last days?
Till Saturday, Friday, before we lost him, he was still speaking to members of the opposition, speaking to all of us about the need to prepare for 2026. Peter, what has happened, like I stated, is that our economy was bad as of 2021, is far worse. The new president had pledged that there will be a moratorium on foreign debt. He has accumulated more debt, about almost $4 billion. He had said he would attend to the cost of living crisis. Things are triple than the prices were in 2021. Then the democratic space, where the opposition have suffered the worst brand. We've been arrested, we've been tortured, we've been thrown in prison. Currently, we, the opposition, have lost over 7 seats from dubious judgments. You are, for the first time other than the shrinking democratic space, the narrowing of the autonomy of institutions, where you see the executive's hand at legislature, the executive hands in the judiciary, the interference with our independent electoral commission of Zambia. We are in a perilous environment at the country, and there is almost an agreement that President Hakainde Hichilema, who is the current president, has squandered the greatest opportunity that the people of Zambia gave him. They gave him a wide mandate. He won by almost 60% with a runaway margin of 1 million. He had such a huge mandate that you wouldn't think that 4 years later, if you were to do opinion polls, that he would sit where he's sitting. The estimates are that he's sitting around 32%. President Lungu was very concerned about the path of our country, where the opposition were being harassed, the opposition were not allowed to hold public meetings and public rallies, the opposition were forever at courts or in jail, that then the key issues of our country, such as the economy, were not being attended to. He thought that maybe he didn't work hard enough to sell his message, to sell his achievements, that the opposition, with sweeteners and lies, went away and won that election. He probably felt a personal loss that maybe if he spoke more, maybe if he sold his achievements more, maybe Zambians would have re-elected him and then he would give it to whoever would have come after him. So his commitment to democracy became a personal project.
And perhaps finally, is there anybody that he perhaps has pointed to as he felt would be a good successor or good next president? Is there an anointed one?
He himself was very lucky that it was clear that was the anointed one, because President Michael Sata appointed him as Secretary General of the Patriotic Front. He proceeded to appoint him as Minister of Defense. He proceeded to appoint him as Minister of Justice. And every time he left the country, he made him acting president. So he didn't need to, President Michael Sata didn't need to say anything. The actions were very clear that Edgar Lungu was anointed. We are sitting at a space where President Lungu was telling us that he's coming from his medical treatment at the month end, and it was at the end of June, and he was encouraging us that he was going to bring the opposition together so that we could field one candidate. That work remains in the works.
Okay, we'll leave it there and not giving anything away. But thank you so much indeed, Ambassador Mwamba, for helping us tell the story of former President Edgar Lungu and his legacy. Thank you so much indeed for your time and your powerful insights.
Thank you very much, Peter, and thank you for the great opportunity that you've given us to speak about our country. I'd just like to make some gratitude to the region, Peter. We've received so much messages, first from President Cyril Ramaphosa, who has been hosting President Lungu in South Africa and who has facilitated his stay and his delegation. Then the entire region of SADC have sent us messages of condolences, most of them personal. You have, for example, a special letter penned by President Uhuru Kenyatta, who had fondly become his good friend, from Kenya. And President Lungu sat in an opportunity where he was both a good friend to his vice president, a strange vice president at the time, William Ruto, and the president, Uhuru Kenyatta. So we've had received those messages of condolences with humility. This is something even could have surprised President Lungu.
Ambassador Mwamba, it's been a pleasure. Thank you very, very much indeed.
Thank you. God bless you.
And that's how we come to the end of today's edition of Channel Africa Conversations. Thanks so much indeed for joining us. Before I go, a reminder, we'd love to hear from you. We'd like to know what you'd like to see on the program and the conversations you'd like us to have. On your screen now, you can see how you can contact us on our social media pages, and you can start by commenting right now below in the comments space. Until the next time, from me and the team, take care.